Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They don't fall short because they aren't smart enough, strong enough, or lucky enough. They fall short because somewhere along the way, they made a decision about who they are, and they never questioned it again. They settled into a version of themselves that felt safe, familiar, and acceptable, even though deep down they knew it wasn't who they were meant to become. You see, potential is not something you lose. It's something you leave unused. And the greatest pain a human being can experience isn't failure, it's regret. It's lying awake at night wondering what might have been if you had trusted yourself just a little more, if you had pushed when it was uncomfortable, if you had listened to that quiet voice inside instead of the loud opinions around you. Most people never reach their potential because they confuse movement with progress. They stay busy, but they don't grow. They repeat the same year of their life over and over again and call it experience. They wait for motivation instead of mastering their state. They wait for confidence instead of building competence. They wait for certainty, not realizing certainty only comes after you take action, not before. Let me tell you something that may shake you to your core. Your life today is a direct reflection of the standards you've accepted, not your desires, not your intentions, your standards. What you tolerate emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually. If you tolerate mediocrity, mediocrity becomes your home. If you tolerate excuses, excuses become your identity. And most people don't consciously choose low standards. They drift into them because it's easier than demanding more from themselves. Fear plays a massive role here. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of being seen, fear of outgrowing the people around you, fear of success, because success changes expectations and relationships. And instead of confronting fear, most people negotiate with it. They say, someday when the timing is right, when I feel ready. But readiness is a myth. Nobody feels ready to become more than they've ever been. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Your comfort zone is not comfortable in the long run. It slowly drains your confidence, your energy, your belief in yourself. It numbs you. And the longer you stay there, the more you start to believe that this is all life has to offer. But that restlessness you feel, that frustration, that quiet dissatisfaction, that's not a problem. That's your potential knocking, asking to be expressed. Another reason people never reach their potential is because they attach their identity to their past. They say, that's just the way I am, or this is how I've always been. But the past does not define you unless you let it. Your identity is not fixed. It's something you create through the choices you make daily. Change your choices, and you change your destiny. But that requires responsibility. And responsibility scares people because it means you can no longer blame anyone else. Most people also underestimate the power of consistent small actions. They want a breakthrough without the discipline. They want transformation without repetition. But mastery is boring before it's beautiful. The people who reach their potential aren't more gifted, they're more committed. They show up when they dawn, feel like it. They train their mind when it wants to quit. They condition their emotions instead of letting emotions control them. And let's talk about environment. Show me your environment and I'll show you your future. Most people are surrounded by limitations disguised as love. People who mean well but don't dream big. People who normalize settling. People who feel threatened when you decide to grow. And if you don't consciously design your environment, it will design you. Proximity has power. Who you listen to, what you consume, what you tolerate, it all shapes your identity. Here's the turning point. The moment you decide that your life is your responsibility, not your parents, not your past, not your circumstances, the moment you decide that no matter what's happened, you will use it as fuel instead of an excuse, that's when potential turns into power. That's when you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, how can this shape me into who I'm meant to be? Your potential is not something you achieve someday. It's something you live into, one courageous decision at a time. Every time you choose growth over comfort, every time you raise your standards, every time you keep a promise to yourself, that's how identity shifts. That's how confidence is built. That's how an ordinary life becomes extraordinary. Most people never reach their potential because they slowly fall in love with comfort. Not all at once, not in some dramatic moment, but inch by inch, choice by choice, day by day. Comfort feels harmless at first. It feels earned. It feels like relief. And before they realize it, Comfort becomes a cage they defend instead of a ceiling they break through. They stop asking more of themselves, not because they can't do more, but because demanding more requires discomfort. And discomfort scares people more than regret does. Low standards don't arrive announcing themselves. They sneak in disguised as realism. People tell themselves they're being practical, mature, responsible, but what they're really doing is negotiating with their own potential. They accept relationships that drain them, routines that numb them, jobs that shrink them, habits that weaken them. And once a standard is accepted, the mind works overtime to justify it. The story becomes, this is just how life is, instead of, this is not who I'm meant to be. The most dangerous thing about low standards is that they don't feel like failure. They feel normal. When everyone around you is settling, settling feels reasonable. When everyone complains, complaining feels justified. When everyone avoids risk, avoiding risk feels smart. And so people stop questioning the quality of their lives. They stop challenging their patterns. They stop confronting the gap between who they are and who they could be. Unchallenged identity is one of the biggest reasons people stay stuck. At some point in their life, usually early, they decide what kind of person they are. They label themselves. I'm not confident. I'm not disciplined. I'm not the kind of person who succeeds. And once an identity is formed, every decision becomes an attempt to stay consistent with it. Even when that identity is painful, familiar pain feels safe. Than unfamiliar growth. People protect their identity even when it costs them their future. They'll sabotage opportunities just to avoid feeling like an imposter. They'll shrink their dreams so they don't have to expand their self-image. They'll stay loyal to a story that no longer serves them because rewriting it would mean admitting that they've been living beneath their capacity. Comfort also kills urgency. When there's no immediate pain, there's no immediate action. People wait. They wait for motivation. They wait for confidence. They wait for the right moment. But the truth is, urgency is created, not discovered. The people who reach their potential don't wait until the pain is unbearable. They move when the discomfort is optional. They act before life forces them to. Another trap is tolerance. What you tolerate becomes your training ground. If you tolerate excuses, you train yourself to quit. If you tolerate disrespect, you train yourself to feel small. If you tolerate inconsistency, you train yourself to be unreliable. And most people don't realize they're being trained every single day by what they allow. Standards are not what you say you want. Standards are what you live with. Comfort keeps people busy but not fulfilled. They confuse activity with progress. They check boxes, complete tasks, survive the week, repeat the cycle. There's motion but no momentum. Growth requires intentional stress. It requires choosing the harder path when the easier one is available. And most people don't fail because they can't handle the hard path. They fail because they never choose it long enough for it to change them. There's also the fear of standing out. Growth separates you. Higher standards isolate you before they elevate you. When you start demanding more from yourself, it makes other people uncomfortable because it confronts what they've avoided. So people lower the IR standards to stay connected. They trade potential for belonging. They choose approval over authenticity. And slowly their life becomes a reflection of everyone else's expectations instead of their own vision. The truth is, potential demands confrontation. Confrontation with your habits. Confrontation with your excuses. Confrontation with the version of you that wants things to stay the same. And that confrontation is internal before it's external. You don't change your life by wishing for more comfort. You change it by deciding that staying the same is no longer acceptable. The moment standards rise, behavior changes. The moment identity is challenged, growth begins. When someone decides this is no longer who I am, the brain starts searching for new strategies, new behaviors, new resources. But as long as comfort is the priority, potential will remain theoretical instead of lived. True potential is unlocked the moment you take full responsibility for your mindset, your environment, and your daily actions, especially when it's uncomfortable. Most people spend their lives looking for permission, waiting for a sign, hoping for circumstances to align perfectly, or wishing that motivation would appear like a gift from the universe. But that's a fantasy. Potential is not discovered by chance, it's created by choice. And choice begins with responsibility. The moment you stop blaming circumstances, other people, or even your past, you step into power. Responsibility is the key that separates those who dream from those who achieve, those who talk from those who act, those who settle from those who soar. Taking responsibility means recognizing that your results are directly tied to your decisions, not your good intentions, not your feelings, not the cards you were dealt. Your life is a reflection of your decisions, every single one. And those decisions are shaped by what you focus on, the standards you maintain, and the habits you consistently follow. Most people never reach their potential because they avoid responsibility. They defer it, rationalize it, or deny it. They allow external forces to dictate their lives while telling themselves, I'm doing the best I can. The truth is, potential is not nurtured by excuses. It is ignited by accountability. Your mindset is the battlefield where potential is won or lost. If you tell yourself you're limited, if you believe you can't, if you let fear dominate your thinking, you will never stretch beyond what feels comfortable. But when you take full responsibility for your thoughts, for the meaning you assign to events, for the interpretations that shape your reality, you reclaim power. You decide what you believe about yourself, and you decide what you will do in response to life's challenges. Most people let fate decide for them. They let circumstances, other people's opinions, and fleeting emotions dictate their trajectory. True potential is seized when you refuse to be a passenger in your own life. Environment is another factor that determines whether potential is realized or wasted. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, the ideas you consume, the energy you allow around you. If your environment is stagnant, fearful, or limiting, your growth is suffocated. And yet most people never take responsibility for this. They accept toxicity, negativity, and mediocrity because it is familiar, because it doesn't require change. But potential demands a fertile environment. It demands proximity to people who raise the bar, challenge you, and inspire you to think bigger. It demands exposure to ideas, experiences, and practices that expand your capacity. And taking responsibility means designing this environment consciously instead of leaving it to chance. Daily actions are the bridge between potential and reality. Most people underestimate the cumulative power of small, consistent choices. They wait for massive inspiration, for a grand breakthrough, for motivation to strike. But the truth is, potential is realized in the mundane, in the ordinary, in the repeated actions that most people ignore. It's in the decision to rise when you want to stay in bed, to train when you feel tired, to study when you feel distracted, to connect when it's uncomfortable. These small actions compound, shaping your identity, conditioning your mind, and training your will. Responsibility means showing up even when you don't feel like it, because you know that consistency outweighs emotion every time. Taking responsibility also means embracing discomfort. Growth is uncomfortable. Expansion is uncomfortable. Facing your fears, breaking old habits, and challenging long-held beliefs create tension, resistance, and uncertainty. Most people never reach their potential because they avoid discomfort at all costs. They cling to safety, familiarity, and routine. But discomfort is a sign that you are moving toward your potential, not away from it. Responsibility requires you to choose growth over ease, progress over comfort, and courage over convenience. Every time you step into discomfort with intention, you expand what is possible for yourself. Another critical element is self-awareness. Responsibility begins with honest reflection. Most people drift through life without noticing their patterns, their blind spots, or the ways they limit themselves. They act reactively rather than proactively. Taking responsibility requires you to observe your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors without judgment, to identify where you are sabotaging yourself, and to make deliberate changes. It requires confronting inconvenient truths about yourself and refusing to let fear, pride, or denial dictate your choices. True potential is unlocked not by ignoring weaknesses, but by facing them head-on and transforming them into strength. Finally, taking responsibility means committing to mastery. Potential is not a one-time achievement, it is a continuous journey. It demands relentless focus, repeated action, and unyielding discipline. It demands that you refuse to settle for temporary results or partial effort. Most people never reach their potential because they aim for comfort, not excellence, because they settle for mediocrity, not mastery. But when you accept full responsibility for your mindset, your environment, and your actions, you commit to excellence in every area of your life. You refuse to let excuses, fear, or external circumstances dictate your limits. You understand that potential is a living, breathing force that grows when nurtured, challenged and exercised consistently.